Welcome everybody back to Veil of Sound.
Yes.
It is Video Interview Sunday over here, and I'm very, very happy to have a very good bass player here with me from a German band that I cherish very much. I got Ilja from the Hirsch Effekt here. Ilja, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
First question, but I always ask, although I already know the answer. Are you wearing any band shirt merch today?
Not today. I'm today in a really casual look since it's Sunday, as you said, and sometimes it's still summer here in Germany, so sometimes I like not to always pose in band shirts in front of the camera. I do that 99% of my time, but today, today's one of those relaxed days, so yeah.
Very good. So if anybody asks what I'm wearing the shirt of a bass player friend of mine, Pieter van Asche from Belgium, under his moniker of Innerwoud. Then I want to open with a question that strikes me and strikes a lot of people about your band. Are you aware that you are one of those bands which fans from genres as vastly different as free jazz, metalcore, punk, gent, prog rock, or even noise rock, all people can agree on your band? Are you aware of that you're serving so many tastes?
Well, to be honest, we sort of always got together to write the music that we wanted to write, or to put it simple, or music that we maybe wanted to hear from other bands, like, wild genre mixes. Of course, we started to realize that there was not a certain type of people who were coming to our shows, but there were actually people from different genres gathering, that there would be younger people from the metalcore scene, or then also older people who were mainly Frank Zappa listeners or something like that, or people who were more interested in classical or jazz music. So of course at some point we realized that it was not only one type of music fan that was coming to the shows, but that it was people from many different genres. That's true. But what these genres exactly are, and what these scenes are and how people find together, we have no clue. it's I mean, at the end of the day, you make the music you make, and you don't always pick your fans, or you don't choose them, so
Yeah.
you don't know who's going to show up at the shows. Yeah, so maybe half aware.
Half aware. So in a way, the intention was always to make not one kind of genre, right?
Well, I think we're just too interested in many different things and styles, and for us it got boring sort of to just stick to, let's say, doing just death metal, because we would be missing the other, the counterpart at some point, like the musical counterpart, and just sort of spreading out to different musical areas, because it would be, like, for me, or probably for the other guys also, pretty boring to just, smash around with blast beats all of the fucking time. Which would be like, okay, yeah, great. Niels is also an acoustic guitarist, like, he's studied classical. I play cello myself. I'm a lot into electronic music myself as well, so why not incorporate, if you're musically also capable of more than just, shredding around on your 8th string forever. It just didn't occur to me or to us, so I think that's how we started to spread out more and more, and probably pushed a few boundaries a little bit too far a couple of times. Like, I don't think we all like all the things that we've done, but it's been a musical journey and it's been interesting. Yeah, so we sort of like to experiment around with different things, and we always thought it's great to have no musical rules, in that sense that you don't put a stop to where you're actually going, and That's then what just happened at the end of the day.
It's also interesting to see how your band has, I don't want to say changed, because most people would say that it's still in a way very, 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 very open. But when I listen to Urian, the new record, I have to say that I think it is a tad more accessible than the other records. Is it just my perception?
I think it's kind of funny because people, like a couple of people who've heard the record now, have been saying that. In my opinion, the record is way more, well, what is the opposite? Like, it's not so accessible as like Collapse, the album that we did before, or even The Escapist, because it's, in my point, lacking of singles because the
Yeah.
songs are way longer. Again, there's barely a song that even goes under 6 minutes,
Yeah.
which means I thought, well, the label guys will probably be pretty pissed because we're not serving singles. These are long songs that really take their time
Yeah.
to evolve. They are, in that sense, more complex than the stuff on Collapse, but they are not so mathy. They're not so
Chaotic.
they're not so fiddling. They're not they don't break so many rules
Yeah.
maybe inside one song that we used to do on our previous records. Like each song is in a certain atmosphere and it sort of sticks to that atmosphere and sticks to
Yeah.
maybe the rules in that certain genre. But the musical variety is more differing
Yeah, that's true.
in my
But
perception. That's why I don't think it's more accessible because it's harder this time to grasp the whole journey and the oppositions that are taking place because they are taken to such extremes. Yeah.
so was it your intention to make the songs stick to their respective mood a little bit more, but then have a wider variety of those moods? Like you said, each song plays a little bit more to that rule, but the collection of songs is more varied.
Well, maybe at a certain point, I would always say, when you start an album, you start like the same as it happened this time. You start creating songs and ideas, and then you don't see the whole path laid before you, what it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be and what it's going to become. You have just these many ideas, and then at some point you realize that, like with this album, that many of the songs were somehow mood wise and atmosphere wise connected to each other. And then you start to think about what is still missing, where's this journey going, and then you evolve. Um, yeah, you evolve with the path that is, you know, laid before you, and with the songs that come to being, and then you, yeah, maybe then at a certain point yeah, that's the thing you would say to yourself that, yeah, maybe, we should sort of write this kind of song and stick to, yeah, creating a unique atmosphere with each
Mm-hmm.
puzzle piece, and then we're still missing this and that, but you don't usually start out like that. Um, I think this time, what the songs share and why I said this is that when we wrote the songs, we did not want to maybe break so many rules because we were trying to rely a little bit more on atmosphere rather than our instrumental skills and fiddling around. So if you would fiddle more around and come up with crazy ideas, you would break the atmosphere. And this time we were sort of like more relying on that. That's why there are a lot of black metal parts in it, death metal parts, heavy riffs that sound dark, but they stay dark. They stay sort of weird, and
Mm-hmm.
we would then maybe stick to a death metal riff and this kind of style of riffing throughout the whole song and not come up with weird jazz licks or weird sounds in between that would sort of break the whole atmosphere that we were building up. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I always find these things a little hard to explain.
No problem. Maybe we should also take a step back and look at the two EPs that you released in 2021 and 2022.
Oh yeah.
Because I think, at least in a certain way, as I said, I only think or feel like I hear some influences of those EPs. So let's go to Grégaire from 2021. Please tell us who came up with the idea of redoing the songs that way.
Well, actually, we had this one session that must have been at the beginning of 2020, just before the pandemic. In Hanover, it was a live session with many musicians where we did an orchestral version of our song Collapse.
Yeah.
And this special orchestral arrangement was arranged by Anthony Williams, who later did the piano versions to a couple of our songs, instrumental piano versions. And he did the whole gigantic orchestral arrangement for choir, strings, brass, and synthesizers, and all piano and all kind of weird instruments. And we found the arrangement so great. You can actually check out this live session on YouTube. You can find it. It should be somewhere up there. It's called the D-Room Studio Sessions, Collapse. And after the session, I think Niels was sort of just joking to Anthony, actually, this is so great. Why don't you just, you could do these kind of great orchestral arrangements from our songs. I think it was sort of like joking with it. But then Anthony was like, yeah, well, I mean, I could do it with certain time and small budget maybe, And then we were, of course, immediately, well, that sounds interesting, but we did not follow that thought because we actually had different plans. We were supposed to go on tour with the new record. New record was coming out 4 months later and everything. And then the pandemic came. Well, of course, all the plans went to shit. And then at some point, that idea came up again. And because we were all at home, we didn't have any tours, the record was sort of out, we thought, well, what could we do actually in that time that we're all now sitting home? So the idea came up again that we hit Anthony up and he was still in for it. And then we started crowdfunding. It was successful. And then the whole thing came to life. And then, of course, it was like we did not just want to reuse old songs, but also maybe get further in our own songwriting and said, hey, actually, guys, we should write another song for this project, give it Anthony, and then so that he could orchestrate it, but to be more flexible in that process because we were still being open about the song. We were offering him too that we could alternate the song, or we could write it differently if he has ideas how he would like to orchestrate it, whatever. But basically the song turned out to be the way it then came to be in its original form, and he just did his orchestral magic on top, and that's how the EP came to be. A crowdfunding project in the pandemic.
And then the second EP that you released last year, Solitaire, which is the way that I perceive it, it's just you as single musicians reworking or reinterpreting other former material, right? So like you reworked some of the songs.
No, Solitaire is we all wrote a song by ourselves without the help of the other band members.
And how did that feel for you? How did it feel to write a song for the Hirsch Effekt without the other two guys?
For me, it's not so special because I do that sometimes anyway. Like Palingenesis, that's my song of the EP. That's not the first song that I've written entirely by myself for the band. So I had done that a couple of times before. That's why for me it's sort of like a logical process. It doesn't feel so weird. I think can't say so much about Neil's song. I don't know how it felt for him. I mean, we've written a couple of songs always in pieces of two. It's probably also a little bit more unusual for him to write by himself. I think he was a little bit sort of struggling with getting the song done, or he was like unsure of certain parts if they were actually already logical, you know, how the song was evolving, or if he had to change things. So maybe he had to sort of it was a little bit difficult for him not to have so much feedback as usual, you know, when you're together in teams of two. But basically he also finished the song by himself in the end. So um yeah, don't know. With Moritz, I think he had the biggest struggle because he's not usually, um, yeah, he doesn't write songs by himself like that, I think. So I remember some discussions going on about that he was pretty, well, not helpless, but pretty, you know, um, yeah, well, maybe a little bit helpless. Like he didn't, I think, at all times know where the song was going, and it took him ages to finish that one song. And then it was only ready in its instrumental form, and then he was like, "Yeah, I have no idea what to do with the vocals because I don't sing. Like I don't write vocals. I don't write lyrics. Like how the fuck I'm supposed to finish this song?" So actually, that's the part where we then helped him out. Like then I wrote the vocals for that song and let him basically choose which of the takes or ideas he wants to implement and which not. Um, I think he then even then came up so with a choir by himself because he actually sings in a choir. And then we wrote the lyrics together as a three-piece for that song. And then like after months it was finally finished. But yeah, I think for him it was the hardest. I think he wasn't so keen of that whole process, like in the end.
So would you say that some
But it
of
was a
the
challenge and it was something different.
exactly, and it's of course also something that keeps you busy during lockdown after lockdown after lockdown. Um, would you say that there are some influences of those two EPs on Urian?
Whoa. Uh, also a tough question.
I'll give you an
Maybe
example. Maybe
yeah.
an example helps. I feel as if the clean vocals on
Hmm.
this one, on the new record, I don't want to say they're like any of the EP vocals, but I have a feeling as if, you know, they are they are as close to melodic, how should I say? They're as close to classical harmonies as I've ever heard on the Hirsch Effekt, which I like. I think it's a huge step forward with these clean vocals. The other vocals are also great as always, but for example, the opener, um, you know, that is a track where I saw like, oh, there a lot of time has gone into perfecting this mood, into this harmony. And that is something that I feel, at maybe it's just my stupid perception, but I feel as if that is something that is connected to Grégaire and maybe even Solitaire. But it's like a lot in the vocal melodies and harmonies. There is something where I say like, that is a huge step forward for me.
Hmm. That might be. That might be. Yeah. I mean, there's also, yeah, that could be very well. I mean, we've always had that in some way, but maybe it's more present on these albums. But then again, I don't know if it's our natural vocal, like evolving what has happened throughout the years, or if it's somehow connected to the Gregere phase. Because basically, the Gregere phase was also a lot of Anthony just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, reorchestrating
Mm-hmm.
older material, which we had already written a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's for me, it's really hard to say because, of course, like you evolve, but you come from the one step to the next, and you, of course, like get better in what you do. You do different stuff that you did a couple of years ago. Maybe I would say sound wise, there's a relation to Solitaire because Solitaire was a lot more like metal and melodic death metal laden. So I would say it borrows a little bit from that sound. Like we did not go back to the fiddling sound of a record like Aknozi that we did, but we actually went to that more down-tuned guitar and, you know, um, world that relies also sometimes more heavily on atmospheres. Like Palingenesis is a track that, you know, has a big hook and wide atmosphere, and that sort of which also sometimes takes place on the new record. Maybe also the style of how the vocals are sung. Um, the heavy use of blast beats, down tuned, yeah, relying on down tuned guitars. Maybe that's sort of a connection that is there.
Mm.
But
that is also what you already mentioned, right? So the different soundscapes or the different because of the complexity of your stuff, I would even say the different sound universes that you are spanning.
Universes.
That you know, it seems very much like there are elements in songs which are very, very heavy. Some of the heaviest stuff that you have done, as you said, a lot of black metal. But at the same time, there are very nice melodic passages, and I think this is a little bit more, how should I say, it's a little bit more at the gates than Dillinger Escape Plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And that is something, is it just what you said? Like, is it
There
the
is not so
personal
much Dillinger
evolution?
going on. At least the personal interest at this time. I don't know. It was a long, dark and sad time, man. I mean, the pandemic fucked up a lot of things and changed a lot of things, changed a lot of perspectives. At least talking about myself, I was not sitting at home and being like, "Oh yeah, I would love to, yeah, party,
Mm.
No, I was more like creating pieces that were more introvert and um, yeah, maybe more melancholic and is, or were displaying my feeling and turned out a lot darker and moodier than alarming, like in a flippy sense of way, musical
Mm.
way. And I guess probably a lot of other people felt that way. The guys in the band were also not having such a great time, so that's maybe sort of the mutual connection that
Mm.
also found its way into the music.
Mm.
It turned out different. That's why we, in my opinion, we also have more softer tracks on the album. Like in my
You know,
opinion, the album is actually not so, it's not so heavy as maybe people would first think if they hear the first single, Urian. Um, Sort of like quite well balanced and very soft pieces, but also heaviness. Yeah.
yeah, for the first time, and that is especially with the opener, but for the first time, I had the feeling as if there is a fragile side to the Hirsch Effekt. Also with some of the lyrics that you wrote. And I have a feeling as if very often I hear stuff like, oh, I don't know, we don't know, we don't know where we're going.
Oh, that was a question.
Yeah.
I would not say that because we've always had fragile elements. Like even the first two records were very, I mean, they were maybe written from a very emo perspective, or that is how it was perceived. But we've always had quite fragile lyrics also in
Mm-hmm.
the past. That's why I wouldn't say this is something new, or but I would say in a certain sense it's yeah, it's more back again and more present on this record. Um, Musically as well as lyrically. Yeah.
But would you say that there is a certain overarching theme between all of those songs? Is there a red thread, or is it rather a
Musically,
mood?
it's musically it might sound like there's a red thread. That's what a couple of people have been saying, but actually, it is not a concept album. It's not a concept record. For me, the songs are more like cousins or friends with each other that share this mutual feeling and a mood that is somehow very different from each other, but then somehow connects them. But one must say that the themes and the lyrics, maybe they share a certain fragility, but they were written by different people in different points in time, and they tackle different themes that are sometimes very contrary to each other. That's why it would be wrong to say it's a concept album.
Mhm.
So yeah.
You've already spoken or hinted at the first 2 or 3 records that you've done. You have already done a highly difficult and a highly respected trilogy of records right at the beginning of your career with the Hold On trilogy. Would you do something like that again, or do you say like, no, if we do concepts, then for one album, not overarching over 3 of them?
Never say never, but you know, it's yeah, like the same with the Holland trilogy. You know, it wasn't like a master plan from the beginning. It sort of just evolved that way throughout the years. There was no intention to make a trilogy. Like even with the third record, it just turned out at one point that I said, hey, you know, actually these lyrics that you're writing, and I said to Niels, and that, you know, and musically and thematically, it's like actually like the third part of this trilogy that we're actually writing. So we just realized back then that we would probably be writing a trilogy. So this is nothing that we, you know, planned from the beginning. That's why, of course, never say never, but I don't think anybody of us has the intention or like the great master plan or the vision to, oh yeah, I see this anthology album coming up consisting of 8 records, and you know, many times we don't know what we want to do next. It's sort of yeah, it might happen, it might not happen. Let's see.
So it's you didn't sit down like Coheed and Cambria and say like, okay, let's record 5 albums. Let's start with a second one, and then shattered so many
No,
expectations.
no, actually, we're pretty. We start from scratch often, and most of the time we do not know what we're doing.
So how must we envision the songwriting for the Hirsch Effekt? Is it a democratic process? Is it one person bringing in a song and the others work with it, or how does it go?
It's all of that, and anything can happen. That is the truth. Like with this record, there were a couple of songs where we actually went into a holiday home that we rented. It was during the pandemic, in lockdown actually, but we were allowed to travel because of our work, which is true. So we locked ourselves in a remote home in the middle of nowhere and sort of started writing songs together. And we threw a lot away, but came up with 3 instrumental demos at the end of that, I think, 10 days period or 2 weeks, something like that. First had a hard time finding ourselves into what we actually even wanted to do, you know. So songs can evolve together as a 3-piece, but most of the time we actually write in teams of 2, because we found out we can write that way the best, because there are not so many people in the room, not so many opinions, influences. So of course a lot of it is a democratic process, but sometimes it's easier to make decisions in teams of 2. Then there's also the case that also with this record that there's a couple of songs that some person writes completely by themselves, and they just bring it as the ready-made piece, and then you just have to record it, study it, because the song is basically already finished, or to the greater extent. So all these processes sort of happen during a songwriting album phase. Yeah, it's been like that actually for the last 3 records.
What I also like is that sometimes you, at least tiny tidbits that are hidden within the songs. For example, when I listen to Granica, I think there is a very, very nice kind of funky bass line in the middle of it. Other tracks have like very straightforward rocking elements like Otus. And again, it's always something which seems like fresh and new. And is that something that is important for you as a musician yourself, or also for the band, that you do new stuff, that you don't repeat yourself too often?
Of course, there's also a danger of repetition, and I don't always know if you have full control over it because people could be saying, those guys just repeated themselves, and I would be, oh, I actually thought we were doing something different this time. But
Mhm.
like the perception of that can be very unique. I think there's not such a great interest of repetition in our like in our way how we create and approach music, but most of the stuff usually comes with how we feel and just from the gut, like what we're interested in at the moment and what we want to do. We don't ask ourselves too much those questions if we are now repeating ourselves, or it's not like we listen to some completely new style and think, oh, we now necessarily we absolutely have to do this, or
Mm.
now incorporate this, or even in the worst sense, copy this. But but of course it might influence us. But I would say most of the stuff just, you have to be inspired by something. And the inspiration where it comes from can be so different. It can be a new piece of music or a band that you hear. Maybe you're not even aware of that. Maybe it comes out a half a year later, and if you sit down and want to write a song again, you know. But
Um,
it can be a soundtrack. Could be a book. It could be a real life event, and then it just comes from the gut. So I think that's the way we most of the time work. Yeah.
so you are primarily a bass player and learn cello. Is there like a person, or are there like personal influences on your playing, people that you admire, where you say like, oh, that is someone that I just love?
You mean as a bassist or as a cello player or
Both,
as a
possibly.
musician?
All three of them,
Ah,
possibly.
oof, that's difficult because that goes into so many different directions. Like I would give totally different answers if it was a bass or if it was about music,
So
But
let's
I
stick
sort
to
of
bass and cello.
bass and cello. I don't have any cello influences, I would say, because I just grew up, as an 8-year-old kid having to learn that instrument, and then I dropped it when I was 16 because I discovered the bass guitar and realized I wanted to make rock music. And then I picked up the cello later again because I realized I could incorporate the cello in my rock music, which was a great thing. But it was not like that I was out there listening to any crazy cello artists or whatever. I mean, there are great people out there, also classical virtuosos that are absolutely amazing. Apocalyptica were people who did something totally new with their approach to that instrument. I mean,
Yeah.
great guys, absolutely great band, but it's not like that that they're my idols or I sit all the time at home and listen to them. But
Mhm.
and then with bass, it's sort of course, as a bass player, you always get into it with the funk and all the funky guys because that's where the importance of the instrument comes from. Of course, you to study the instrument and find out about names like Marcus Miller and Victor Wooten and all these world stars and other guys from the 80s that do the slapping and the tapping, and already back then perfect did it on an instrument. So of course you studied all of that, and certain of them became your idols. But then a lot later you maybe discover a couple of other guys who do something totally different, that are maybe they're not even so skilled, but you find them cool because of something else. Um, and then from that it goes sort of more to music.
Mhm.
Start listening to music, to bands, and I think it doesn't matter if it's a bass player, or if it's a guitarist, or if it's somebody who plays all of those instruments, or if it's just a singer, but you find the band and the music inspiring and special. And that was sort of with me definitely more like the guys from Tool, or from Nine Inch Nails. Um, Later, maybe the guys from Between the Bird and Me, or
Mhm.
the Dillinger Escape Plan. Um, Hard to tell. So many bands. Primus. At
I was
some
wondering
point,
which one you would drop first, Primus or Pastorius, because that is like
or
the two that you very, very
Pastorius.
often get from bass players.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not a big Pastorius fan. I really respect what he like did for the bass, and he was one of the first big and absolutely amazing player. But I was never so hard into jazz. I like fusion stuff, but I was more into funk, and I was also more into the guys that came later, like Wooten, who actually did a lot of amazing classical melodic playing on it, and like total different stuff.
mm.
And I mean, nothing against Jacko, man, he was absolutely great, kind of in his way unmatched. But it was very jazzy stuff. You had to love jazz for that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
I have a few more questions before we come to the infamous quickfire round here on Veil of Sound.
sure.
First one is the cover. We have to talk about that. Who came up with the idea? When I first looked at it, I immediately was reminded of that cover that Nothing, that American shoegaze band, did a few years ago. Um, but who came up with the idea for the covers to Urian and to the singles?
That was our longtime art worker Alejandro, actually, from the States, from San Francisco. Because well, basically he just presented him the new album concept and the record, and said, hey, here are the songs, the this, the name this and that. Maybe you've heard it, in German history it's had a certain connotation. um Whatever you feel like doing, and what inspires you, just go for it. Like, we don't tell him what to do, he just does his thing in the end. But he always wants the lyrics translated, and a short song commentary, or like an explanation what it is about, and then he sort of just does his magic. That's what he did. He just came up with, I think, the Urian figure, sort of, the devilish, unwanted guest. That was like kind of a thing that struck him, and he was at a certain point really getting on this whole Goethe and the devil thing. I remember him telling that to me. But then at some point, he just came up with the artwork and was like, "Yeah, I thought of this, and then I thought of that, but actually, I think this should be the album cover." And so he presented a couple of ideas, but at the end, after a small internal discussion, we went along with his album cover. And then the other single covers were actually just elements from the artwork itself. They were not intended as single covers, but then we basically just took those elements and made the single covers out of it, because we had different faces. Sometimes it would be more like a childlike face, sometimes more like a woman. It fitted to the album cover, where you also see a face, a human face, or what you think of is maybe still a human face. Yeah.
And the other thing that you've just mentioned or dropped is the title names, the names to each of your songs.
Yeah.
Most of them have a meaning, and it's always interesting to look up what they mean, like Urian, or also something like palingenesis,
Yeah.
agnosia, whichever, not all of them, but many of them have a deeper meaning. But who comes up with these track titles? Do you have like a band internal thesaurus where you're like, oh, that one fits. Oh, that one fits.
We used to argue a lot more in the past together about song titles. There were sometimes really absurd discussions about it. this time it was sort of, it's usually the guys who like write the lyrics that come up with the titles, and then I mean it's always open to discussion if it has to be something different or if it doesn't fit. But actually, most of the time, it's in the meantime. Um, though that case that the album titles just fit, because why take anything else? Um,
Hmm.
like I think Otis was the original title. Actually, Urian was not the original title. I gave it first the name Uren, which means the same, but Urian was more German in the end, and sort of to
Yeah, and
make it
otherwise people
German
would say like,
sounding.
yeah, and otherwise Germans would come up like, oh, spelling
Urin,
mistake
yeah, yeah, Urin, yeah, spelling mistake. So
or
that
Uhren.
changed. Yeah, that changed. Well, I think for Blood, for that track, we did not have a title yet. It had the demo title Irrlicht, which I thought was nice. It's also a classical reference, actually. Um, but at some point, I think it's weird if all the other titles are in a different language or are like weird, and then you have a German word in there. So I think Niels and I then were searching for a title in a foreign language that would fit sort of into the concept of the song.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the last song on the album, I actually gave that song the title before the lyrics even existed.
Ooh.
Um, because I wrote the instrumental song, so like the instrumental demo, and then I gave it a title, and that was a finished title, and the meaning of the lyrics basically, in the end, when they were finished, they also fit the title. So that was also one of those demo titles that actually never were changed.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, but most of the titles usually come with the lyrics once they're finished. But also with Otus, it was the case. The first demo title was just called Otus. Like two, I think 1.5 years until the lyrics were written. Actually, yeah.
Sorry, you have to repeat that because you were not audible at that moment. So what did you say? What
Sorry,
about Otis?
sorry. Yeah, with with Otus, it was the same, that it actually carried the song title 1.5 years prior to the lyrics. Yeah, so we never changed it.
that seems as if it's a child who, after 1.5 years, starts to speak.
Maybe.
Um, I would like to clue up something for our English-speaking audience, and that is your band name.
Oh,
And as I also, I mean, like I know that you're a band who would answer Zappa's famous humor and music question with yes. I also want to start that at least explaining the band title with a somewhat funny question. What do you prefer, diarrhea or constipation? Diarrhea, letting it all out, or constipation, not being able to?
diarrhea.
And now for everybody to clue it up. The name the Hirsch Effekt is taken after a medicinal term, which is named after Rachel or Rachel, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I think it's Rachel Hirsch,
Yeah, Rachel. Yeah.
a not well enough known Jewish German professor for medicine. I think she was the first or the second one, the first or second female professor in Germany ever. I think it was the first. And the term Hirsch Effect has to do with her discovering something about the human body and how it digests. Now, question. I'm very sure you didn't want to hint at your band being shit, because it's not. But did you just like the term, or was there something else, something more that made you choose this term and not something else?
Actually, we had a hard time coming up with band names, as it always is the case. Something that sticks with you around for a couple of weeks and then still doesn't sound like shit. Um, and our old drummer Philip back then came up with the name because he had read this weird article about this person called Rahel Hirsch who discovered the Hirsch Effekt and said, "Hey guys, this is it. This is weird. Like this is a weird process in the body and something totally crazy. We have to name our band after this." And then the came because he said, "Well, but we cannot just stay Hirsch Effekt by itself because all the great bands start with the. So we also need the Beatles, the Rolling Stones,
The Nirvana.
the Nirvana, the Nine Inch Nails, the Hirsch Effekt." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so then we just took it because we were like, yeah, fuck it, why not? It's weird. It's weird. So
It is weird.
let's take it. Yeah.
But there is nothing more to the choice. It's just the weirdness of it.
Of course, we read the article, like what the whole thing meant.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Did you also read up on her?
Yeah, we did, and we thought the whole story of her life is so weird. And she died alone, and as like went mentally mad and ill, and died in a mental hospital. So it all kind of fitted somehow to what we were doing. So that's why we thought, yeah, this is very weird. Let's just stick to it.
Yeah, and also the fact that she had to leave the country in order to be able to study and all of that stuff.
Yeah. She was actually Prussian, I think.
Yeah. No, she was Frankfurt.
No?
Frankfurt.
But she was not born in Prussia?
No, she was born in Frankfurt and then later moved to Prussia.
Okay, it was that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's a very interesting life. And now to you, because I know that you like to keep busy. You've been doing a lot of different projects over the year, like tour bases for, I think, Mono Inc., wasn't it?
I've worked with a couple of bands, yeah.
Exactly. But you also produce a hot sauce?
Yeah, I also produced the hot sauce, yeah.
How is that business going?
Well,
Spicy?
it's things are very hot and very spicy in between. Yeah. It's no. That whole thing was meant as a joke in the beginning. It was I've been a long time Chili fan my entire life, and I would always be the guy, no matter if I was on tour with my band, or even as a session musician for other bands. I would always bring the hot sauces, the extremely hot sauces, and maybe in the somewhat small circles got known as the chili guy, who always, that chili bass player who always brings the hot sauces. So at one point I had the idea of doing one myself, just to be maybe able to sell it as a merchandising article, but I didn't think of it as anything serious, and I had too much to do, too much album work, session work, that's kind of work, being too much on tour. Never had the time to do that. So then came the pandemic, and then came the second year of pandemic, and then touring was still not possible, and then there was no new record out, and of course I was thinking of, well, what am I going to do now? I have to do something, and so it was one of these pandemic projects, and that then came to be, and I hooked up with a chili manufacturer in Hanover. Actually, I had a couple of discussions with them a couple of years back because they had this chili shop in Hanover and in Berlin, and were producing their own hot sauces, but also selling hot sauces from the United States or from England or from wherever. So then I hit them up and said, I'm the bassist from this band, and I would like to do a merchandising article, and I have an idea, I have a concept, I know what I want to have. I'm not a newbie to the chili hot sauce business. I know what I like and what I don't like. And they thought the idea was great. And we're like, yeah, we actually know you're a band. I know who you are. And I was like, okay, funky. Well, and then we just did that project together. And then half a year later, I had my first own hot sauce, yeah. There's a second one coming out now.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'm
But
selling it on tour, and I'm selling it in my online shop. But it was a test run. It was like I think I've sold 500 pieces by now, you know. But it was I did 300 first, and I didn't know if it was like if anybody would buy it at all, you know, because it was really just out of fun and out of, you know, it was a hard project. It was just just did it for myself and because it was fun to do it, man. You know, besides all the music and the other stuff that the things that you take serious. So for once, it was actually nice to not take yourself too seriously. So
yeah,
that's why I did
and
it.
it
Yeah,
and it even in a way fits to the band, right? You
it
know.
does. Yeah.
So how hot is it on the Scoville scale?
Actually, for me, it is not too hot. I think it's somewhere around 100,000, maybe. I wouldn't even think it's so hot. Maybe it's 80,000. For me, it's already too lame in the meantime, but it's very, very tasty because it's not always about, you know, the amount of heat level. It has to taste. It has to have this organic, this real fresh, pure taste of that. You know, you don't think there are some preservatives in it or some not too much sugar, some other fake stuff that you don't want to have in sauce. It does not taste artificial. It tastes organic and real, genuine, and that's what I wanted to have.
But we're talking about a sauce that is not as runny as Tabasco or other
Yeah,
stuff. It's
yeah,
it's it's thicker, right?
it's thicker. Yeah, it's thicker, and yeah, it's thicker.
I'll
It's chunky. It's fruity. It has a lot of lime in it. It has a little bit of rum in it, and a couple of different chilies. And yeah, that's why it did not turn out to be the crazy hottest, like that will burn your tongue immediately after 3 drops, but it has power.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's potent.
Okay, so I will get myself one of the second run um, bottles. And I also will use this as the opening to our quickfire round. At the end of every Veil of Sound interview, our interview partner gets questions like, what do you like more, AC versus DC, Alice in Chains versus Soundgarden,
Ah,
Black
all right.
versus Right? And you have to choose one of the alternatives and give a short explanation for why. And as we've spoken about hot sauces, which chili do you like more, the Scotch bonnet or the Carolina Reaper?
Oh, that is a tough question. I would
I know.
say the Carolina Reaper because it is hotter. It
Yeah.
is more tomatoey. Yeah, I like the really hot stuff. So if I would be stranded on a, you know, lonely island by myself and I would have to choose, I'll probably die by a heat shock and choose the Carolina Reaper.
How many Scoville does it have? It's like
Oh,
more than a million. More
I
than a
think
million,
at
right?
least 1 million. I think the record is at 2.5 at the moment.
Goodness gracious. For everybody who is not familiar with the Scoville scale, it's a scale to measure heat and
Yeah,
how spicy something is. And just to give you an example, Tabasco has 5,000 Scoville.
yeah,
For Ilya, that is like, can I have some water, please?
yeah, exactly. No.
Again, you've played in a band called Mono Inc., so I'll give you two alternatives: mono versus stereo.
Stereo.
Hmm?
Oh, come on, that's pretty easy. I mean, who wants to listen to music
I actually,
in
I
mono?
actually can understand people sometimes preferring mono for like very old recordings, you know, so that it's a
Hmm.
little bit more condensed. But of course, with anything after the Second World War, stereo is probably your choice. You've spoken also about metalcore. So Killswitch Engage versus Parkway Drive.
Kill switch engage. Anytime.
Anytime?
Yeah, I mean, some people, I mean, I know a couple of kids nowadays may dub their sound as, you know, that sounds old school, whatever, but I grew up with that shit, you know, and they kind of were at the forefront when this genre came or became big. And, you know, like, I would, of course, it's hard to say about bands if they invented anything, but like for me, they did,
Yeah.
alongside with As I Lay Dying and a couple of other bands. They sort
Yeah.
of like did incorporate these melodic hooks and these poppy elements with like brutal metal and hardcore bits and double bass and blasting around. So and I think they're really good songwriters. They always had great singers, and I like their songs still
And
until
Dudkowitz
today.
is a great producer.
Absolutely. And the songs are great. I mean, they're maybe not so artsy, fartsy, 10-minute long crazy proggy pieces, but I myself don't listen to only that kind of music at all times. Sometimes I also like to have straight up metalcore and just enjoy normal song,
Hmm.
with verse and a hook and a verse and a hook, and that's it. So yeah, definitely Killswitch, yeah.
Yeah, and they have one more advantage over As I Lay Dying. Their singer never tried to kill
Yeah,
his wife.
yeah, they're actually probably quite nice people.
I don't know about that, but at least, and I must say, for everybody who says, oh, As I Lay Dying, they're so great. Yeah, but I wouldn't listen to them anymore. As something.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to our alternatives. Converge versus the Dillinger Escape Plan.
Ah, the
I
Dillinger
never
Escape
said
Plan.
those would be easy.
No, the Dillinger Escape Plan, because I think they're live like one of the craziest bands I've
Yeah,
ever seen.
yeah.
There's hardly anything in that genre that sort of like you do not want to play after Dillinger. You just don't.
Yeah, I
It's
was fortunate enough to see them in all three stages, like with a first singer, with Dimitri, and then
oh wow.
singerless, and then with Greg. And the singerless version was the one that went on tour with System of a Down, and System of a Down came out sweaty.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. You just do not want that. And besides that, Dillinger sort of uh I mean fucking pushed the boundaries in the whole, mathcore thing. I mean,
Hmm.
who the fuck ever had done anything like that before them? It was absolutely mad.
Yeah.
Um and they evolved to be, but also this great rock band with like just normal songs in between where the singer could actually sing great clean vocals
Yeah, still
and
does.
yeah, and they were also good at that. So that's why they would win.
Sorry, they would win. You were
Well,
lost there
they
for a
would,
moment.
yeah. I would place them. I would place them on top of Converge. Yeah, for me personally. Yeah.
Hmm? At the Gates versus In Flames.
In Flames.
I
Very tough one.
know.
In in Flames, maybe, yeah. Because I also like a couple of their cleaner songs, and
Mhm.
they have a variety of. I must also say I didn't follow at the Gates in recent years. I didn't. Was was there not like a long period where they didn't do anything at
Yeah,
all?
yeah, they did,
Or am I
and they have
mistaken?
released
Yeah.
new music since their
Yeah,
reunion.
I checked out some of those tracks, I think, but I haven't followed them so much in recent
Mhm.
years. I just know a couple of the old stuff. Yeah, In Flames, I think because uh it just more hits my taste, I think, and I also like a couple of their cleaner songs where I thought, hey, that's actually like a cool progression there as a band. Yeah, I'll probably pick In Flames, yeah.
A few more older couples. Ornette Coleman versus John Coltrane.
I'll take both.
Okay.
I no preference. No, seriously.
When one was looking for singles, then it would of course have to be Coltrane. But
Yeah,
when it
maybe,
comes to
but
whole records,
oh, that is
that
so
would be hard.
question.
Yeah.
That is so question. Like all these old jazz masters, like even comparing them to each other would be like what exactly do you want to compare?
Yeah. When we talk about your new record, as we did, we heard about the vocals. And I also know that you like a lot of different music. So choirs, and especially church-inspired choirs or choir music. Which one do you like more, Gregorian choral choirs or Baroque stuff, let's say like Bach, for example? So more medieval or more Baroque?
Oh, I think I would go with Gregorian actually,
Interesting. I would have
because
assumed you would choose Baroque. Why Gregorian?
because Gregorian is, in my opinion, in terms of harmony and atmosphere, they're more open.
Mm-hmm.
They're weirder. They're not so settled yet,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, musically. While in Baroque, there's a lot more settlement already, what it wants to be in a harmonic way. And,
Yeah.
there are harmony-wise very interesting things going on in Gregorian stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is, yeah, I would probably stick more to that
Mm-hmm.
because I'm also actually more interested in, as a musician, even when coming up with choirs with open tonalities or, you know, interesting other kind of harmonies rather than sticking up to building a normal chord with,
Mm-hmm.
um, with the casual intervals that and usual intervals that you would actually use.
Very
But
interesting
but
explanation.
it's very tough, man, because I mean Baroque stuff is absolutely great too. It's just different.
It's
Yeah.
just different. Um, a little bit more of the classical stuff. Shostakovich versus Tchaikovsky.
Shostakovich.
I would have assumed so.
Yeah,
And now,
because yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No,
you
no,
go ahead.
just
Give yours.
yeah, man, because I mean the music that he wrote was partially really melancholic and beautiful, and it's has a different sense of fragility that what I perceive from Tchaikovsky, but also Tchaikovsky did
Mhm.
great stuff, man. I mean, absolutely great pieces, but yeah, I think I like the Shostakovich mood more overall.
Let's talk about instruments with very distinguishable and very unique sounds. And not about the instruments, but rather about the people who developed and invented them. Adolf Sachs versus, I forgot his first name, Theremin.
What did Sax event?
The
Invent?
saxophone?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Holy shit! Wow. Yeah. I must say I'm actually really bad at this. That like who invented what?
Yeah, but
Like
which
in terms of
instrument do you like
instruments.
more? The saxophone or the theremin? Theremin? No, the pronounce it.
Nah, man, I would go with the saxophone.
Okay. When it comes to biographies, I would always choose Theremin because he was a spy.
Really?
Yeah, he was.
Well, the
Okay.
kind of instrument that he created fits. Yeah.
Yeah. I have three more. And let's start with something from my youth. Refused versus Fugazi.
Refused.
And now to something, I hope you see the connection to your band. Ashen Spire from Edinburgh versus Imperial Triumphant from New York.
Ha. Yeah, of course. Imperial.
Okay. And last one, you have, or the name Zappa was dropped a few times in this art interview. Two albums by Zappa. Hot Rats versus Shake Your Booty.
I think I'd have to stick with Shake Your Booty.
Because of the
Just,
music or because of the title?
just because out of homage to Bobby Brown goes down and all the other weird titles on that one.
Yeah,
My,
probably.
one of my favorites from Zappa is actually Joe's Garage, of course, and
Yeah,
Weasels Rip My Flesh is also
yeah.
great. If you haven't
I
heard that one yet, guys, check it out.
I also must say I still have a strong feeling about Peaches and Regalia,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah,
because I like the instrumental stuff. But yeah, Joe's Garage is of course also a classic.
yeah.
Ilya, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the interesting details and answers. I hope that the sun is still out there and you can enjoy the rest of your day. And everybody, if you have not listened to the new The Hirsch Effekt album, Urian, yet, do so. Maybe also listen to Grégaire and Solitaire before, and then you can say whether I'm just a stupid nerd who tries to see things in other things or whether I might have something there. I hope you like the interview. If you do, then maybe give us a subscription or follow us on our socials, on Instagram, on Facebook, or wherever you like to find us. If you like to do a little bit more, go to our website, find out about our Patreon, how you can support us there. And now, Ilya, for you, chance for final last words.
Oh yeah. Well, hey guys, maybe check out the new record. It would be great, of course, if you give it a chance. If you dig it, it would be, of course, nice if you would maybe consider buying a vinyl or a CD because the album comes out in various formats. And you always support the bands the best way if you buy the record or if you buy the merch or whatever. If we're coming near to you, we're touring this autumn in Germany. Um, Maybe coming abroad next year. Just check out our socials, our Instagram for tour dates and for some other news. It would be great if you would, yeah, check out some dates and maybe we'll see you on some.
So, thanks for your time, Ilya. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.